reports of our demise were greatly exaggerated. We thought the show was dead. We felt like the show was dead because we were down. We were sad. I was sad. Chris was mad. But
I looked at it. It kind of looks like I was about to cry or something.
It was not fun.
Maybe I should have been.
This is USfanTV. We talk about soccer as it relates to the United States. I don't think we're going to be talking about the national team on the field for quite a long time, but we're going to talk about what the hell do we do now? And we have extra people. I should tell you that I am Pat. He is Chris.
That means I am Chris.
We also have MLS legend Bobby Warshaw.
Legend.
Huh. That's exactly what I was.
That's where you come in, buddy. And investigative reporter extraordinaire and Milwaukee local celebrity Bryan Polcyn.
Hey guys, it's nice to see you again. You know what? It's so funny because I didn't know you existed, and then I find you.
Well, you knew
at the
we
worst
existed as
possible moment in
humans.
soccer history.
You didn't know we did a show until the other night, and you found that
Well, I knew
interesting.
you existed in life.
All right, so the question is...
the only other person to love Slobo Ilajevsky as much as me, perhaps?
Oh, come on. You're speaking my language. You make me think about the 1980s.
I was going to say, you guys actually probably remember when we weren't in the World Cup in 1986, being from both St. Louis, where they cared about soccer, and being old.
I remember the 82 World Cup. I remember watching the 82 World Cup.
86, funny story. I was a high school freshman in 1987.
Jesus
and
Christ.
Our varsity soccer coach used to play this inspirational video from the 86 Mexico World Cup, the earthquake and all the tragedy and the heroism of people being rescued, intermixed with goals being scored. And that was like our pump-up video in the locker room before we went out to play. I'll never forget.
Was the hand of God goal in it? I think it had to be, right?
I don't think Hand of God was in the video. No.
Should have been. All right, so here's the deal. We've had 48 hours to kind of chew on this. And if you didn't watch our last video, Chris and I were mad and sad, and it was we're normally kind of all over the place. Bobby's made fun of us for being kind of all over the place, but that was exceptionally all over the place because we were just speaking at whatever came to our mind at that time. It's pretty
well, as we've said, it's not like we're truly aiming for objectivity here. I mean,
no,
we didn't put fan in the name because we were like, oh no, we're going to report on this like true journalists here. No, I mean, we are fans first, and broken-hearted fans the other night. It was. I certainly. It's a good thing that I didn't break anything, I guess.
I felt like, and I know this is ridiculous. But one of our regular viewers, Alex, his dad wrote that it was, top 10 worst days of his life. And he's like, he's older than we are. And I was thinking about it, and I feel stupid saying it because it's soccer and we don't play on the team. It doesn't really matter. But it felt kind of like, not like a parent died, but like maybe a cousin died or something. Like it felt like something that happened that was going to change
like some peripheral family member.
Yeah. Maybe the dog died. Like that's kind of, I felt giddy the next morning. I had a headache.
This was a bit like the ending of Old Yeller.
It was. It actually was.
Except I think we were the dog.
So the question becomes, and everybody immediately starts jumping on, even that night, people were jumping on with takes on what do we do now, whether it's, we fire Sunil and that's the magic trick. Obviously, Bruce is probably gone. Is it pro-rel? Is it pay to play and opening that system up? Is there any one thing that we've really botched in this country that we need to fix that could magically fix us? And then I got to thinking, I don't know, the youth teams are pretty good right now. They're probably just going to do nothing. Sunil might not stick around, but I don't think anything's really going to change because we're probably going to qualify for the next World Cup, probably. And then we would automatically qualify for 2026. And even if we don't get it, there's still going to be enough teams in it that we probably will qualify for it. And I don't know if we're not like the Germans where we buckled down and got together after what was relatively a minor failure compared to this in their Euro failure in 2000, where they buckled down and everybody got on the same page and they instituted a plan to win the World Cup. I don't think we care about winning the World Cup at the USS level. And I say that with this quote from Bruce that I saw about an hour ago on Will Parchman's Twitter. The criticism on Sunil is unfair. Why is the president of the federation responsible for the result on Tuesday? Asked about USSF's role in player development, he said, why do people think U.S. soccer is in charge of player development? Players play in clubs. Why is that U.S. soccer's responsibility? They support the clubs in this country. They support player development, but it's not their responsibility. So he's passing the buck as about as hard as you can. Is USSF responsible for this?
As I've been thinking about this, I wrote pages and pages of things to talk about tonight as I was thinking about kind of all the questions that sort of need to be looked at. And it's true that who the next coach is such a futile discussion right now. That's pointless. I mean, right now, if you were to name a coach, even on an interim level, I think you're looking at current results, past results. And realistically, they're all now past results. I think you have to evaluate really where the program stands overall. And I think there are broader questions that have to be asked. And one of the things one of the things I wrote down was, USSF has to determine or better clarify their role in player development. Does it continue to be their job to have, excuse me, like the Bradenton Academy, or does that become should they, as the broader embodiment of U.S. soccer, be pushing more club teams to have better youth development programs themselves? Do we push that off onto them, or do we continue to do it kind of like they started it back in the 90s when we had no other resource where they take it on themselves? I mean, it's not completely unheard of. France does have the École. I can't think of I can't think of the name of the town or the name of the school, and they're the same. But I mean, they do have
it's definitely École. It's definitely École.
I know enough French that I can at least get by, and I know school. Anyway, for whatever reason, I can't think of it right now. But they do have they have some kind of youth training, national youth training system. So it's not completely unheard of. But for the most part, if you look at the rest of the world, it is on the clubs themselves to develop these players, and it's because that's part of their business. So is USSF going to stay in that? Are they going to? Could they use some of all this money that they were talking about, all these revenues, all these surpluses that they were sitting on just a few months ago? Could they use that to push player development elsewhere? But at the same time,
with what they're not getting from the World Cup.
At the same time, though, you also have to say there are a lot of promising players on the horizon. For as weak as this current player pool was, and I think it's in some ways it's unfair to say weak, because I think it's still probably the most talented individually group that we fielded to this point. Having said that, there weren't any players between basically 30 and 22, 23.
Barely, yeah. Josie.
I mean, I was looking at
the Germans, and you can't count the Germans. We didn't develop them.
So, of the guys who were there on Tuesday, you've got 3 24-year-olds, 2 22-year-olds, and 1 19-year-old. Everybody else is effectively overage. I guess there's
a great youth movement here. We're hearing all about this great youth movement. There's a lot of great young players, so there's a lot to be excited about, right? But missing this cup, you get this lull. Obviously, there's a lot of casual fans, and even I played my entire life. I played soccer my entire life. I'm probably more like most casual fans, where every 4 years I get jazzed up, and in between, I'm not watching it maybe as closely as you guys are. But do you have just that next generation right behind them that we're going to miss out on? Miss out on inspiring some of those players to play, because there's a gap here of 2, 3, 4 years where this isn't top of mind, where this is a humiliation, and where that's going to hurt the team. Maybe in 2022 we're fine. What about 2026 and 30?
I would get an auto bid in 2026. It doesn't matter. We'll be in the World Cup.
I do think there's I guess you call it maybe an opportunity lost cost here, in that you may see kind of an echo in 10 years or something, where you've got those kids who maybe are like 6 to 13 or something right now, or next summer, who they're kind of like, Bobby Wood has said he was like 9 years old or something and saw the World Cup and was like, what the hell is this? I want to do this. And that was how we decided to start playing soccer. There are kids who could be like that, who now suddenly won't see the U.S. and maybe won't care as much. And maybe then you do see a kind of an echo in 10 years of something like this. And you see, effectively, we didn't produce a lot of good players in the 90s, or enough good players.
You're roping Bobby Warshaw in that, you know that, right? Bobby, the people want to hear from you. They're complaining that we're not letting you talk.
No, you guys are all saying interesting things. I feel like we're like, not only did our cousin just die, but we're like talking shit on him right now, you know? Like, I don't feel emotionally prepared. The only things I would have to say would be a little broader and different. So that's why I really wanted to hear what you guys had to say on these topics. Because I think when I say what I, it's gonna like,
you're gonna blow our minds.
So it's really not. No, I'm not gonna blow your minds. It's quite the opposite. So I guess I'll give you my. Like, this is what happens in life, right? It's like horrible things happens, and we blow all our energy early, and we're like, we got to do this,
Mm-hmm.
and then nothing happens, and we're like, fuck, man, like nothing happened, we might as well give up. And I just don't understand. I guess I'm just like, I'm really tempering myself to not get over emotional right now, which I know is not what you guys want to hear.
No, I mean, I get that, because I think that knee-jerk reactions are a lot of times stupid and the wrong one. And I know that a lot of people are immediately thinking that people need to be fired. Like, Mexico wouldn't even let Bruce back on the plane, and they probably would have, had a cartel kill Sunil Gulati or something like that. But we got a little bit of time here to make sure we get it right. It's just, I don't know. I don't know who the people. There needs to be people in charge who know how to get it right, and I don't know that the current group is motivated to get it right. They seem to think that the status quo was fine, and this was just unlucky. Especially if you read U.S. Soccer's website right now.
And that's been,
this was unlucky, right? Like, I think we can all acknowledge. So this is why I'm having trouble having the conversation, because what amongst the noise is actually signal, right? Before you do quote unquote sweeping changes, what that happened over the last, and I could be like, I want you guys to cross-examine me on this. What over the last 4 years is legitimate signal to signify huge change, right? Like, we didn't qualify, yes, but like, we didn't qualify on a goal that shouldn't have counted, a 1 in like 100 game against Trinidad, a Costa Rica game, which we played better than we have in like 10 years of qualifiers and just didn't win. And so, yeah, like, enough things happen and it's no longer luck. It's no longer coincidence or random, but are we over that threshold? Like, are we fully 100% sure that this group wasn't good enough? Or like, Michael Bradley started for Roma. Darlington Nagbe is the best at what he does. Maybe the U.S. has ever produced since Tab Ramos and John O'Brien. Like, if Omar and Beasley, like, these, I guess we're like getting out our pitchforks real quick without actually thinking if it's right, if the premises that we're building off of are accurate.
Well, I mean, the idea is,
and they might be,
and we've talked about whether we're crazy on this or not, but the idea is, if we're a country of 320 million and we play soccer regularly, we should be able to find enough people that can beat Trinidad.
So that's
no disrespect to Trinidad, but
I mean,
I was going to say this to Chris. When Chris said that, he was like, "There's going to be," or maybe Pat's like, "There's going to be one kid out there that'll be motivated." Like, so the population theory just does not exist, right? There's no such. I mean, I hate to, like, Iceland just qualified, right?
Yeah.
The population theory,
true.
like, no person that talks soccer in America should talk about the population theory or athletes. Right, like, no. If I hear one person say if Reggie Bush played center striker for the U.S. national team, I'm gonna lose my mind over the next 4 years. Like, we don't need better athletes and we don't need more players.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, we certainly. I don't think we need more people doing it just to make it happen. I think it's that the way I guess the U.S. has developed players, or maybe the lack of development, is that we're not necessarily getting the right players, or we're not training the players properly to advance them correctly. I mean, that one of the other points I was going to bring up, I guess, when we're looking forward, is I do think the USSF should take a meeting with Germany and say, how the hell did you guys do this? And I don't mean in theory, because we can understand the theory of, okay, they got all the individual leagues together, and they said, how do we institute a plan here to make everyone play similarly, to progress players through the ranks, to get players playing a certain way, to get them practicing a certain way. I understand the theory of it, but in practice, how do you make that happen? And I understand that they had better coordination in some things anyway. How do we force the NASL to do things when they're suing USSF anyway for what they're claiming is essentially creating a monopoly? If I were Sunil or whomever, you got to fix that. You got to make that go away, even if it means you kill NASL, or it means you buy those guys out, whatever the hell. You got to do something to solve that. And I think you have to, whatever. I'm getting off topic here, but the point is, you gotta look at how did if you truly want to change things, then you got to look at how did someone else who successfully did it make it happen, and how did they make it happen in practice, not just as an ideal.
I guess I just have one final point on the general idea of premises, right? So this group lost, but if we were to shift our minds, what if this wasn't our best 11, right? What if we just got into this mode with Klinsmann and Bruce, and actually we can field 22 who would have beaten this 11 4 out of 5. What if, why do we take 11 players over a 16 game sample size and define our country in the soccer? This is what I don't get. It just seems that we're jumping to these emotional and these grand conclusions without evaluating our premises and the building blocks of our emotions and our consequences.
That's a fair point.
I guess,
yeah.
To that point, the idea of are we overreacting here? Is this you could look at it and say, if Dempsey's goal goes in late in this game, if instead of hitting the post, if the phantom goal doesn't happen, then we get through. We've got time to fix things before the cup. Maybe we show well. We
probably make the quarter. We probably make the second round, right?
Who knows how it is?
Yeah.
But with that said, I think the big question is that this may be sort of one of the best things to happen to this program, because if we squeak in, if we get in there and we show reasonably well in the early round, if we get to the quarters and we just don't do much more, does this ever advance? Shouldn't the United States be dominating CONCACAF, not surviving? And that's the thing that I think is frustrating for a lot of fans, is to watch these games and think, why are we even in a situation where there's a scenario that we don't qualify?
I'm not in these players' heads, but I feel like that notion is in some of their heads, and I feel like that came back to bite us. I feel like they felt like they were better than they were.
I think that was part of the problem in the Costa Rica loss. Whatever that was, a month and a half ago now. It was we were playing better. It was like even though they had scored, we kind of went but no, we got this. We were still trying to sit, and I think that's why there wasn't a lot of urgency to score ourselves until fairly late in the game there. I think there was a certain, maybe it was nice to have some confidence, but I guess maybe one thing I would give Alexi Lalas, granted he was showboating, but one of the things I liked when he said, Michael Bradley, we don't need Zen right now. There's some truth to that. Bradley has become extremely level on everything, and I suppose it makes him great as an interview. Maybe it makes him a better captain. It certainly makes him less reckless than he used to be, but at the same time, where was the fire in kind of anyone besides Polcyn, say, the other day when we needed this? I don't know. Is that getting too emotional? To me, there needed to be some emotion, I guess.
It's weird. You're right. Why? I mean, if you see the passion of Panama trying to get that goal compared to the U.S., I get it. That's one question I cannot answer. I can very logically and rationally tell you why the team looked sluggish in that first half. How in the last 10 minutes they weren't freaking out, I don't know.
And yeah, that's one of the things it's hard for me to criticize because I don't know what's going on in their heads. I only know how it looks. Like I said, and running around like an idiot, playing like a madman like Jermaine Jones, just playing wherever you want. You can see his intensity level, but sometimes that makes for poor soccer. He's not in the right spot, and it makes us play poorly. So it's hard to go, these guys didn't want it, but it kind of looked that way when you saw the way a guy like Polcyn was playing, and maybe that's just he's
some of it is youth and
inexperience, but maybe it's just he just wants it more than anybody else. He's the one who scored, so I don't know. It didn't look right to me in a lot of our losses, and especially if we went down a goal early. We had games where they would sit back and we just couldn't crack it, and we looked depressed or something. In these games where we went down early, it like killed us.
So I have two things I want to say about that. Part of it's just player selection, right? Like if you're on a spectrum, right? Some players are cerebral, some players are crazy. And if you're both, then you're world class, right? There's so few players that are both super athletic and super good on the ball, both cerebral and really competitive and crazy, right? It's really hard. If you want, it's funny, right? We win this ugly game and people scream, why don't we possess? Why don't we play a smarter style? And we try and play a smarter style, and they're screaming that we're not running through the wall. The second thing I want to say, and this isn't a full defense of why they weren't going buck wild at the end trying to get that goal, why a ball went out for a throw-in and they weren't punching the referee to get that call. But there's human nature things at play other than they're lazy, they don't care, they're not passionate, lack of urgency, right? Like sometimes humans get scared. Sometimes humans get tired. It's hard to get up to a certain emotional level game after game, right? And these aren't excuses, but to me, it goes to the whole thing that if we call a human being lazy and we define that like this could happen to any of us, whether we want to define it or not. There's a great line in the Bryan Stevenson book, Just Mercy, right? All humans are broken. All humans are flawed. And it's only when we acknowledge that other person up there fucking up could just as easily be us that we can actually make progress going forward. So as we talk about developing players and developing teams in America, we can only get growth when we stop saying that person didn't care, that person was lazy. And there are guys like that. But I can tell you what, Josie Altidore, Michael Bradley, and Omar Gonzalez are not those people. So it's only when we start to think of the actual human nature elements into this beautiful game that we love, can we start to improve our development. That's my rant.
Does
So
Alex
that's my
Calabrese here have a point, by the way? Alex Calabrese is calling for a soccer NIT. That's Chile, the U.S., and some others. Would we watch? Would you want to even see that?
The He Believes Cup.
Yeah, I'd watch. I think that'd be cool.
I would. We should do
We'd all
something
watch,
with
man.
it.
We would totally watch.
Yeah,
And
I
then
mean,
the best part
we'd
would
be
be
in
if
it now,
ESPN
so yeah, I'd watch.
What would you do if ESPN bothered? How great would that be? Sorry, take your $200 million, Fox. We're going to take the NIT.
This is.
Oh,
go ahead.
No, I'm going to keep going. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about all this.
So this is one of the things I wanted to talk about was I've mentioned this on the show before, and Bobby, you kind of wrote about this the other night. I don't think we're ever going to be great as a soccer nation until we get to the point where kids go play soccer unstructured for fun.
This is the signal, guys. This to me is like, of everything being said right now, all the noise, like this is the black swan, this single point. Keep going. I'm worried.
Here's the thing.
I wonder a little bit.
I'll just cheer you on in the background.
My son is
that's
6.
That's kind of what killed us in the 90s.
My son is 6. He's on a club team, and he's a very good player. He was pissed.
6-year-olds.
He was pissed the U.S. missed out, but I guarantee you that if you go to most of his teammates, either they don't even know, or they're Mexico fans. So I don't think a lot of the kids who play soccer, even my son's on a pretty good club team. The parents are paying a fair amount of money to send their kid here. I don't think a lot of them actually care about soccer. Like, I don't think they watch it. I don't think they play it outside of practice twice a week and on a game on the weekends or two. Like, we're not, until we get to that point where you've got kids that just go out and play, I don't think we're ever going to be great. And my son might go out and play, and I might go out and play with him, but it's not like there's kids in the neighborhood are going to come play. It's not like he's playing, like Mesut Ozil describes playing in like a chicken coop type cage for hours after school. and you hear the same things about Brazil and Argentina, and we're not doing that. And that's, I think, the biggest issue. We're just not there. We don't have kids playing constantly. And I don't think until we get there, we're ever going to be great. And I don't think we're going to get there unless we are great. It's kind of a chicken and the egg thing. I don't know how you get our kids to that point where they're.
I don't know. I've been playing ball since I was 4 years old, and so I've certainly never played professionally. I didn't play in college. I'm 45 years old. I still play men's over 30, at least once a week. We play outdoor in the summer and the fall. We play in the winter. When I was a kid and we had time, we went outside. We played soccer in the backyard. Yeah, we played wiffle ball. We shot baskets. We did other things, but soccer was a thing. That was my neighborhood thing, but it was rare. St. Louis.
You're from St. Louis, though.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say I did the same thing, but yeah. I mean, growing up in St. Louis,
but
yeah,
here,
was the same.
my son is 10 years old, just turned 10. I'm an assistant coach on his team. We practice twice a week. We play games on the weekends. Other than practice and games, guess how often he and his buddies in the neighborhood get out and knock the soccer ball around? None. They don't. If they play, they're playing basketball, they're riding bikes, they're doing something else. But you're right. I don't know how many kids this is just the thing they do because that's what they get out. They get out the ball. They're juggling oranges. Who knows? You don't see a lot of that.
No, and I think that's what it's going to take. And so my idea was more than firing Sunil, more than whoever you want to bring in as coach, which I think bringing in a coach could select new players and maybe improve the player pool. Like Bobby said, maybe these weren't the best 11. More than anything, I think U.S. Soccer needs to spend any of that surplus money on marketing the shit out of soccer. Build, futsal courts in the city. Throw commercials on the air all the time, market the hell out of Christian Pulisic. Put it on TV, make it exciting and cool, and put it before more kids to see. And maybe you can mitigate some of the missing the World Cup and the impact that might have on kids not liking soccer. And by the way, I do think that Roger Bennett said this on the Men in Blazers podcast they did the other day. I think you're going to see a massive amount of people who don't have any idea now that we have missed the World Cup, and the World Cup's going to roll around and they're going to be really confused. So that's a totally different thing.
That's a fair point.
It's a totally different thing, but I do think that's definitely going to happen. But yeah, I think make soccer cool. I think that's what you got to do.
I'm with you. And there's a million
for
things.
so long though. It's, I've had these. I remember having arguments with kids in school because I was a huge soccer fan and a player. MISL was my thing. The early '80s, the St. Louis Steamers, Slobodan Ilievsky, Steve Petcher, Don Ebert. I mean, that was my life. We lived.
Mark
for that.
Polcyn was my favorite player for the Harrisburg Heat.
That's so cool. By the way, you said that in the last time you were on with us, but that's hilarious.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I'm all in for the indoor
What was that?
soccer. Mark Polcyn of the Harrisburg Heat was my favorite player growing up. I'm all in for indoor soccer.
Indoor soccer, MISL, that was the thing. And the NASL was around at the time. We didn't have a team in St. Louis. I knew of it. I didn't really follow it. But the point is, it was something we were passionate about. And I was having arguments back then. Well, one day soccer, it's getting bigger. More people are playing. One day this is going to be our sport. 40 years later, I don't buy that. It's never going to be our sport. It's never going to be number one in the United States. It's always going to share the stage, and it's always going to be overshadowed by the NFL and Major League Baseball.
Yeah, these are things that are. That's a really important point because we're comparing ourselves to these other countries. And there's multiple things about this, right? Like the other countries don't have other sports, so we're not entirely sure how well their models work because they're literally in a different market.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How do we really base what other countries do when they don't fight in a market for so many variables with other sports? We don't actually know if we have the best basketball players in the world, if our model for developing basketball or football, because nobody else plays. Like this whole high horse that these schmuck writers go on from some of these random ass websites and Fox and whatever is just so asinine. We don't actually know if our basketball players are any good, right? It's like literally growing up in the middle of nowhere and not playing travel soccer, and you're the best player. Like so.
My comment about that has always been
best football players in the world because nobody else plays football.
Right.
Sorry, that makes me upset.
And that's it. Like what I've said is, when people say, "Oh, if our best athletes chose soccer, whatever," I've always said that's a bullshit argument because if you look at in the world. in sports in which like everyone trains the same, say tennis, swimming, I guess you could say, well, I wouldn't even say basketball, but say tennis and swimming. These are two things that like they're pretty much the same everywhere you go. Like same kind of people. Like you got to have the money to play tennis or swim because you got to be able to get onto a court or into a pool somewhere. The program's essentially the same from youth straight up to the Olympics or professional, whatever sport you're. Golf is the same way. At those sports, America dominates because we train the same way everyone else in the world does. Soccer is like the one sport in the world where we don't train the same way everyone else does, or we don't produce players the same way everyone else does. We still go through the college ranks. Now, is that better or worse? This is where you can't say because in basketball, it's not the same anywhere. Now, you can say a little bit like Argentina, parts of Eastern Europe and stuff. I guess you could just say parts of Europe where they're starting to become good basketball players. They are training in a different way, and it's helping. But is it making them better? It hasn't yet, but maybe that's also numbers. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if we dominate in tennis except for Jack Sock.
That's what I was going to say.
Hey, I'm not, maybe not right this second, okay? But
I just wanted to say Jack Sock.
I know.
It's the greatest name in all of sports.
We were joking about Jack Sock like last week or something.
You guys want to – let's go.
Currently, no, you can't say Americans dominate at tennis, but we have in the very recent past. So
yeah, guys, let's
and you
make
have to
sure
presume, like we will before not too much longer again. We're still consistently good. It's not like, oh, he's an American, but like I don't know, bicycling. We're not necessarily the greatest, but we have produced the greatest. And I'm not going to say, oh yeah, but they cheated. Yeah, so did everybody else in cycling.
Yeah,
whatever. Anyway, that's way off topic.
I want to hit on what Pat said.
Is that what we need to do?
What?
We do blood doping for the U.S. men's national team. Is that...
Yeah, you guys.
Then
Going
we'll
back to what Pat said, there is a lot of things. There are a lot of things being said. None is more important as the ability to build soccer into our children's culture and make it an activity of choice. To make kids want to play soccer instead of play video games. To make kids want to play soccer at recess instead of kickball. So I implore anyone out there who's saying, what can I do? That, there's these grand schemes. This is what happens in the world, right? We talk macro and everyone's got these big plans. And then there's 300 million in the country and like 299.999 million aren't affected at all, right? So if you want to know what you can do, it's like go have fun with your kid and play soccer.
Yes.
But if you want to have a positive impact, and this was the point of what I tried to say in that article, it's that this isn't the end of our relationship with soccer. And this is, I almost feel a little bit, I feel horrible saying this. I almost feel like this is our our NRA moment. It got taken away from us. So defend the shit out of it. Like go play soccer with your kids, right? Like a horrible thing.
Dead hands.
Yeah, right. Like
feet.
Like maybe this is our moment when we all rally and say, "Oh my God, they're going to take away our guns," and everyone just goes out and buys 100 more guns. It makes me so sad to use this reference. But like maybe this is our moment, right? If there's any good that can come of it, maybe it's that. Maybe we all get super protectionist. But this is a tangent, and I feel bad saying it. But anyway, go play soccer with your kids.
Yeah, make it fun. And I will say this: U.S. Soccer didn't put any effort into promoting it, but like about 3 years ago, they added a coaching license, the F license. It's a 2-hour course for like dads who want to coach their kid. It's $25. You do it online. And it doesn't really make you a qualified coach, but it teaches you basically two things. Make it fun for them and make sure they have the ball at their feet for as much of the time and practice as you possibly can. No lines, no big games. Make sure the kids develop confidence on the ball. That's it. That's all it teaches you. But they didn't promote it. Like I felt like it was a tremendous idea, and they never like this should be everywhere. Go, and if it is, and if everybody's on the same page with this, then maybe soccer becomes fun in that regard. But nobody knows that this course exists. I talked to other dads who coach in other towns around here, and they're like, really? I never heard about that. Like,
that's cool.
U.S. Soccer needs to do more to promote it. Maybe they will. I heard there's some sort of change coming. I think they're taking the reins away from the states as far as the E and D licenses. I think I heard that's coming. So maybe that's but who's making that decision right now? There's just there's no change to the academy. There's so many things, but this is really the one variable that matters. If we want to get better at soccer, we just need our kids to play more soccer. There's a certain level of comfort on the ball. When you watch Mexico play or when you watch Germany play,
those players get the ball, and you can just see their body language, their mind, their eyes. There's a different level of comfort, and you can't get to that stage, right? This is weird. I can probably do a passing drill as well as Mesut Ozil, right? If we go out and do passing lines or a finishing drill, maybe not finishing, we do passing lines, you'll be like, oh, wow, that Bobby guy is like pretty, but it's just that next level of comfort that you can't build anywhere except there's extra hours.
Yeah. It just comes
I think that's fair. I mean, you know, I like Polcyn was saying a few minutes ago, you know, growing up in St. Louis, yeah, I used to sit for like hours, and I had a house with a concrete basement that was exposed. So I would just sit and like pass the ball to myself like against the wall. So by 10 years old, I could pass with either foot pretty precisely. I mean, I used to like, I can't do it anymore, but I used to be able to drop a ball on a dime from like 40 yards. I mean, I used to practice hitting like cones and things. But yeah, could I go, did I end up as a professional? No. But hell, at 12 to 15, yeah, I mean, I could have passed with like anybody in like a drill or something, you know? But yeah, you gotta take it to another level. And that only comes from
to expand that point.
To take like Clint Dempsey trying shit.
Getting touches on the ball is important, but you're right. It's got to be something you're doing because you want to do it, and you do it because that's the whole thing. If kids, this is what they're doing because it's just what they want to do. If I don't want to do my homework, I want to go knock the ball around, then you're going to see those skills develop. It's going to be natural as time goes on. I just don't think we see a lot of that. I think we see kids that are in leagues and parents that are putting their kids in recreational soccer, and maybe some are going into, you know, obviously some of them are going into competitive or select soccer. But I don't know for how many of them, when they're away from practice, when they're away from the organized part of the sport, are just doing this because it's in their blood.
Can I add two? I have another point to make down the line, but the one thing I want to add to this, though, too, is everything we're saying is right, but I also don't want to get distracted on this point, too, that there's a lot of people talking about we need players who have flair with creativity. Let's not miss the point, though. Soccer is a mechanized sport. Soccer is a machine game. When you watch Brazil, even in their prime, when you watch Germany, and when you watch Spain, take note, like literally make a check mark anywhere in your body of how many times they do something where we're like, oh, that's a flair moment, or that's a player showing creativity. It's under 3, right? Yeah. Soccer is a machine game. So I also don't want us to think that we need to let kids go out and like, I hate to say this, but when I talk about being out away from practice, it's almost like you do drills, right? You lay down cones, or you play with friends, or you play a game that really so I hope that we also don't get distracted from this point too, that soccer is a mechanized game. And when I talk about building this next layer of comfort, part of it's just by messing around, but I hope we just don't have that distract us. Like we need a bunch of dribblers and creators and all this. So.
No, you need some of those guys, but most of those guys in the field aren't those guys. It's
center backs. Yeah, it's about learning to read the game.
Yeah, so we need all of them. So it's clear that that could be a problem too. Is that everybody wants to be that guy, so nobody practices to be anybody else. So I think that was always the argument why the NBA got bad for a while, because a whole generation of kids wanted to be Michael Jordan and not be anybody else, and they didn't know how to. They played like Michael Jordan and nobody else. So, there's something to be said for institutional coaching and learning the right way and learning how, a team functions, like you said, Bobby, as a machine. Where you need to move to get the machine to work. So it's definitely a balance.
You make a good point. I mean, it is definitely mechanized to the point that if I do see this in just as an assistant coach in youth rec soccer, is coaches that are talking about the formations they're playing the kids. We're going to run a 2-1-3, and we're gonna, all these creative formations. And I think your kids they can't pass the ball straight. You got to pass the ball. You got to have touch. So yeah, basics, fundamentals. None of this is of course going to get the U.S. into the Cup in 2018.
And then. Can I make one last point that I want you guys to cross-examine me on? Or
yes.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts. So I playing away from soccer is one black swan and one signal to pay attention to. If I were to implore people, the second biggest thing our country can do to get better is pass the ball. This is, to me, the biggest inefficiency in all of soccer. Why is it that the best teams in human soccer history were passers and everyone else is like, we're going to do it our way, right? Soccer is a passing game. The way you beat Trinidad, the way you make a game predictable is you make the easiest pass at all times. So make our country a passing country. The way you make the sum greater than the parts is by having this cohesive passing unit. So that's the second
make
thing
America pass again.
Yeah, I don't know if we ever did pass, but yeah.
Yeah, I know.
That's my thing. If we were to get better, like if I were to say one thing, how do we make it to a World Cup quarterfinal? And other countries don't do it. Like England, right? To me, there's been nothing more asinine than England after their World Cup failures and their Euro failures, saying we need to overhaul. Dude, they have 11 guys who are worth like $80 million on the field.
Yeah.
They have 11 guys that it could go out and do fine. It's just the fact that England refuses to understand how to pass the ball.
The Dutch
right?
fell into that too. And that's, they went from good to bad pretty quick when they started fighting with each other and being selfish. Yeah, it's
like soccer is such an easy game about cohesiveness and chemistry, and technically it's about passing the soccer ball. So if I were to say, how do we get our team to a World Cup quarterfinal in 22, we build a culture of passing. It's either that, it's you get really good at defense, right? Like, or you do what Iceland and Greece do.
I mean, isn't that kind of maybe part of the problem? That's not a very American
do the
thing,
rational
to be
thing.
really good at the fundamentals like passing. We got to have the showboat goal scorer. That's kind of it seems like an American trait to me.
I told my son though, if you can drop a pass on a dime and get an assist, that's better than a goal to me. And that's why I'm trying to beat that into his head. Like passing is you're never going to be able to outrun a good pass. You can't.
Yeah.
It's absolutely.
Well, if I were youth
I was
coach,
always an
if I were
assist
kid,
guy, but I just thought it's because I couldn't score goals. But no, I mean, you're right.
I
Passes are undervalued. Everyone wants to be the goal scorer. That's why, frankly, in youth soccer, what frustrates me more than anything, actually in adult soccer, is the desire, the drive, every time you get the ball, to push forward as hard as you can, go straight for the goal, launch it beyond the end line. Everybody's tired. Everybody's exhausted. No one passes the ball. There's no what's the word I'm looking for? No one sees the value or the honor in making the simple pass. Yeah. And that should be the goal.
I agree.
If there's an easy pass in front of you, make it.
Simple soccer is the best, but playing simple soccer is very hard. It's
deep.
It's the line. It's a line that explains all of soccer, right? And I would just ask all youth coaches, play entire practice sessions where the ball is not allowed to leave the ground. Right? Because the players are going to suck. And I don't fully believe in the human race, but I believe in the human subconscious, right? I believe in our ability that for our brain to solve problems that like we just are surprised it can. And all of a sudden when you put those restrictions, wow, you guys go to a professional soccer practice and you always almost do 3 stages of possession. You do free touches, unlimited touches, you do 2 touch, and you do 1 touch. And 1 touch is almost always better than unlimited or 2 touch. And it makes no sense except that it forces your brain to turn on and the neurons to fire faster. And you put those restrictions on kids.
You have to look at your next move. As opposed to looking at what you're doing, you have to look at where the ball has to go.
Yeah, you get into the flow state. So I implore all coaches out there to make rules where the ball can't leave the ground. Because you guys ever read Thinking Fast and Slow?
No.
It's totally long and not, but the general point is that the brain is lazy, right? And we can't control this. We want to think that humans are enlightened, but at the most basic level, the human brain is very lazy, will always take the easiest way out. And it's just totally insane for us to put $1 billion into a sport or an industry and not take that basic principle. I always say, you give a player an inch, he will take, you give a player off an inch, he will take the full mile of laziness, right? And the human brain is the same way. Like, you have to force the brain to make hard decisions, and that only happens when you're forced to keep the ball on the ground. And that's how we. And I would have said these things if we had won up against Trinidad, right? These to me aren't like blow it all up reactions, but
right.
Now that I get a chance to actually say them.
Well, these are the types of things I think we should be looking at, because some of the, I get. Some of the blow it all up type takes are okay. Maybe, you can't, I'm torn.
I think they tend to be underinformed. I mean, I'm not generally, for the most part, I'm not a blow it up guy, because we are progressing. Like, we are a better team than we were 20 years ago. We are a better team than the team that didn't make it to 86.
I'd argue
We
that
are a
everybody's better,
team
though.
Well, sure.
And
but
are we
I guess
improving
my
more
point
than
is,
everybody else?
Can I?
maybe not, but
Can we talk about?
I guess my point is just that we are progressing. It's now, rather than saying just tear it all down, blow it all up, it's that we have effectively 2 years before our next competitive match for this team. So now there are much broader picture things that you can look at because there's just time to do it.
I have a friend who's going to watch this who's going to beg me to say that we haven't gotten better. That 2002 would crush this team. 2006 would probably beat this team. And every youth player is a total that Weston McKinney is not better than it's the old thing I say, right? Like, Christian Pulisic is not the best player this country ever produced. He's just the one that got the chance at the right time. And Weston, like, these guys are not better than were coming through 10 years ago. I'm not sure that's right, but that I have a lot of text messages coming in that this is like a false narrative that our players are getting better.
I don't think it is. True. I maybe, like, I think parts of 2002, for instance, I would give you a number of those guys are better than at least 90% of this team, maybe better than everyone but Pulisic. It was Donovan in 2002 better than Pulisic? I would not go there.
Pulisic's the best player we've ever produced who also had the opportunity and everything came together.
Yeah.
I think. But, like, what if Claudio had gone to Barcelona?
Bryan?
Yeah,
that
what
was
if
a crazy story.
Yeah, I know.
How crazy was that?
We got to see it in college.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, we're like, oh, Pulisic's the player to be at the biggest club. Like, Claudio Reyna turned down Barcelona. That was the wildest American soccer.
At least back then, Barcelona wasn't quite the team they are now. I mean, they still were pretty impressive. But...
There would have been like him and Pep at center mid.
yeah. Think about that.
Chris, I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just my phone will blow up for the rest of the night unless I say that.
I'm fine with it, and I'm not completely disagreeing. I'm saying if you take the full level of everyone out there, like, there are a number of guys that I would have from the 2002 team. There's some I'd take from the 2006 team. There's some I'd even take from I don't know if I'll say 98 team, but 90s teams. But, like, come on, John Harkes, I think, could still play in this team. He might fuck some of their wives, but he would. Not if he's pulling that shit again. He could play in this team. Claudio Reyna was awesome. I did feel certainly by 2006 that he was actually too slow for the team. Yeah. And he wasn't like Valderrama good, where the speed could be made up for by, I don't know, his ability to, like, drop a ball 60 yards on a dime or something. Valderrama, maybe you can say the same of, like, Pirlo, where it's like he doesn't necessarily have to be fast to still influence the game. Reyna was, I think, by that point, unfortunately, I guess he just kind of played it at an in-between age for us.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Anyway, that's kind of
off
topic.
You guys know better than anybody else I can talk to about this. Is can we take a second to talk about, like, the pay for play conversation? As people who have kids in youth soccer, it seems to me that everyone who's screaming for pay to play is not personally going to go spend $4,000 on a license and pay for fields and coach for free. So how do we solve this problem, right? I just don't I'm not saying it shouldn't be fixed. I'm just saying it makes me upset when people don't acknowledge the inherent
people
issues.
will go, okay, let's add in solidarity fees. Pulisic gets sold and PA Classics gets a ton of money. I don't know how that fixes every other club team in the area that they like. It'd be so few and far between that a club would get a ton of money. I don't know how that fixes the pay to play thing. I can tell you it's really expensive to have my kid play. I don't really like paying that much. It's kind of ridiculous, and it does close doors. Like, that's absolutely 100% true. But I'm not sure what you're right, Bobby. Who's going to do this for free? Like,
what are you paying for?
I got a sick kid, so I got to bail on you guys. You'll have to handle this without me. I'll see if I can get back. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you later.
Good. You're a good dad, man. but I just don't like part of it. I think a lot of it we're yelling at the coaches, but most of what you're paying for, not most, is fields, insurance,
Yeah.
And traveling.
Yeah, somebody's got to pay for it. I mean, I don't know how you fix. I know it should be fixed. I know there should be more opportunities. I know it should be more open. I know it is holding people out. I don't like the argument that the inner city kids are the only hungry kids who have a desire to succeed. Because I can tell you, there's plenty of suburban kids who also have a burning desire to succeed.
So the thing I tell people is when I went to Dallas, we had 5 homegrowns, and I think all 4 or 5 were the main breadwinner for their and this is where, like, I hope this doesn't come off wrong, but the upper class white kid from Stanford, I worked 5 times harder than him in every session. I got there earlier, I stayed later. So that's my only personal narrative to add to this. It doesn't prove the point, but yes, I'm with you on that. We can build a hungry team of. But okay, sorry. That diverts.
And anybody says suburban hungry and inner city hungry is different, dude. I guarantee you this: there is not a kid who plays harder or with more passion or who works harder in the inner city than my son does. He's insane.
Totally.
He's insane. Now maybe on a grander scale, maybe there's more hungry kids in the inner city.
Right.
1-to-1, maybe not. But yeah, maybe there are more because they have to be, because there's nothing. They have nothing else. So,
right. But
I could see that.
But I just am curious for you guys, right? I just don't, like, basically all these things would have to become free. And it seems to me that we're yelling pay for play without actually looking at the things that we would actually have to tackle and how we would tackle them. So is there any solution to paying for coaches and fields and insurance and travel?
I don't know. Other than maybe you start now with the solidarity fees, and then some rich benefactor starts filling in the gaps until there's enough professional Americans playing for big money that money's there. I don't know how you do it. Like I've never heard
PA classes is not pulling in kids from the inner city. I can tell you that much. There's not.
Boys, I hate to cut out on you too, but I got to go tuck my 10-year-old striker into bed.
All right.
So
thanks, Brian. Bobby, that's our cue that the show might have to be over, bud. This is USfanTV. We have a website. It's USfanTV.com. We have Twitter and Facebook and Instagram that are all USfanTV. Thank you to all the new people who showed up, all 18,000 of you who watched the other day. And thanks for your subscriptions. We're almost to 1,000. So if you haven't subscribed to the show yet, please do. We would like to be at 1,000. If for no other reason, then it's a nice big round number that adds a digit and it makes us happy. So otherwise I don't know. If you ordered a t-shirt, they're going to be out soon, is what I'm told. Bobby, do you have any final words tonight?
No, this is great. Thank you. And it is nice to be with guys who want to get to the actual root of things and not just yell. So I appreciate the opportunity to do this with you guys.
Yeah, one thing we set out to be is not a show where we yell at each other, because that's just dumb. That you get enough of that on ESPN or whatever. So you can go watch Stephen A. Smith if you want that. Otherwise, we try to be smart. We're not always smart, that's for sure, but we try to be smart. All right. Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Brian. Chris, you suck. You guys are done.